can you just give me your name and just like a couple of, just a little bit about like, I don't know, hobbies that you have or something that you like to do?
So I'm Korey. I go by he, him pronouns. I feel like I do quite a lot of sports. So I'm really into trampolining. I do baton twirling, which is also a very weird sport. Um, yeah, like just general sports is quite big. I don't know. I've been through a lot of different craft phases throughout my life. I don't know. I feel like that's all about me. But
You're good. And you're a student.
oh
so
yeah,
you're
I'm a
suffering
student.
right now.
Yeah, yeah. Just uni work, to be honest, is kind of everything.
Also, can no, I mean, I know this is about football, but baton twirling.
Yeah.
When did you get into
How old are you when you're in year 7? 12? I think I was just 12. Yeah, and I did it very consistently up until like a few years ago, and then I came to uni and it kind of stopped, and then it restarted last year, and now I'm like actually back in a team, in Bradford, and yeah, it's really good. It's kind of long to get to Bradford though. That's the only difficulty, but no, I'm really enjoying it again. You just kind of have a metal stick and throw it about. But yeah.
Yeah. Can you apply that to like, you know how people do, sorry, this feels like I'm going to say something, you're going to be like, no, that's not how it works at all. But, you know when people do like really cool weapon twirling in films?
So I feel like, yeah, I can get given just like any long object and kind of go about it. Or like, I feel like a winter guard is also something I did for a tiny bit, which is like where they have the fake rifles and they like chuck it. But I didn't get too good at that. But yeah.
Sorry, I'm just like, any long thing one wants to twirl, any round thing one wants to kick.
Yeah.
Cool. Alright, I'm gonna get into football now, probably.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm gonna start real simple. How did you get into football and when did you start playing?
So, I think I used to play it like at home with my like brother and dad. We had like an inflatable goal, which I've just remembered off the top of my head. But like I properly got into it in year 6, like just in the school, like primary school team. And yeah, I feel like I've kind of not done it for a very consistent amount of time. So I think that's probably the most consistent I was playing. And then at like secondary school, I joined the like girls team, because I wasn't out at that point. But yeah, I kind of joined that for a little bit. I'm not 100% how long, for less than a year, and then completely just kind of forgot about it. I came out and I was like, I've not touched that. Like, I feel like it wasn't high on my priority. And then I worked at a fish and chip shop, and it does make sense. So I worked at this fish and chip shop, and we were all really young and really like good mates. So we then all decided we wanted to join a 5-a-side football team, and so we like made a whole kit. So it was blue. It had a little fish on it. We were called Lemon Place. So it had LPFC on it. We made an Instagram account. On the kit, we had a picture of our boss's face. And then on the back, like everyone had like different names. Mine was just like alpha male, like really taking the piss. Like, cause I'm quite a feminine person still. So we're just like really taking the piss out of names, random numbers. But yeah, that was a really fun time. We did like a whole season. We didn't do great at all, but it was very much like we rocked up. We were a fish and chip shop team. Everyone else were these like old lads. Like I was tiny compared to everyone. And yeah, it was just like a random league, like a few towns over. But yeah, since then I've not really done any football kind of at uni. I was thinking about joining, I think it was the trans and non-binary team that's started to come about, because my friends like went to one of those and was like, oh, you should come. And I was like, oh, I'd quite like football. It would be quite fun. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of my overview of...
So much. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go back first and then I'll come forwards again.
Yeah.
I'm delighted. That's amazing. To start with, so when you were, so you're a little bit younger, like early 20s, right? I'm
20. Just 21 tomorrow.
Congratulations. Hey. I don't know if 21 is like a special mark for you or not. But I
feel like it's a bit special.
It's got a bit. You can drink in America now.
Oh yeah, it's so true.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think there is a quite big difference between even just early 20s and late 20s in terms of some generational differences in acceptance of being able to access sport, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was just curious because you said it was kind of a throwaway line, so you might not have meant it like that, but you were saying that like you weren't out, so you were on the girls' team.
Yeah.
So do you think that if you'd been out, that they would have been like, yeah, go for whatever team you want? Or... So
my school was a bit... I wouldn't say it was transphobic, but it definitely wasn't the most accepting. So, like, the head teacher helped me come out, and like when I was ready, and all the teachers were lovely. It was more the like structure. Like my name couldn't be changed on the register. They didn't really know what to do, so I wasn't allowed to go in like the men's toilets. They did offer that there was one gender neutral toilet in the nurse's office, and I was allowed to go to that. But that was like, that's just no one goes there just to go to the toilet. So I was like, no, I'm good. But yeah, it was a kind of like a weird vibe at school. So I'm not 100% sure how they would have dealt with that. Like, I was very big into PE. Like, my degree is sports science, so at that level, like, I was very much enjoying it. I think I was on the football team in year 9, and I came out in year 11 to the whole school. So I feel like there's quite a jump from probably where I felt a bit uncomfortable to actually like coming out and then accepting. And at that point there was only about half a year left, so I think I just kind of was like, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just do other things. But I forgot what I was saying now.
That was just whether or not the school would have might or might not have been supportive, but it seems like they just didn't have the structures in place at all.
Yeah, I think it just wasn't really a thing that had happened. I don't know about now. They probably have a bit more experience as a school, but like the head teachers have changed, so I don't know. It could easily be a rolling ball thing where it just doesn't really actually do much.
Which is RIP, because one wants to think that if one is the first person, then even though it sucks, then maybe it will be better for the next people.
Yeah, but I'm sure there probably was people before, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I like to think that there are.
Hopefully. I know someone who came out in 6th one, but I'm not sure whether to the school or not. So, yeah.
No, it's fair enough. I think it's kind of cool that, I mean, so, not trying to, like, homogenize us all into, like, one experience or anything, but, like, obviously a lot of people I've talked to, it's been like, okay, the trans bit and the sports bit meant that it was kind of impossible to continue to do sports because then, you know, the spaces weren't there and discomfort in body and etc. So I think it's really cool that you're doing sports science. Like,
yeah.
You're really, like, in the middle of everything that's... I'm saying this, like...
no, yeah.
But yeah, you're part of the conversation that's happening. Like, you are actually building these connections.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about, like... I guess when did you want to get... Like, when did you know that you wanted to get into actually studying, like... I'm sorry, I'm really bad on the lingo on this, so I'm going to be asking
that's alright,
stupidest way. I'm like, studying sports stuff.
Yeah, just sports science, I guess.
Like studying sports science. How did you know that you were going to get into that in such a big way?
I kind of had just gone through the flow of life, kind of throughout my whole life. Just kind of like, what did I enjoy? Oh, I'll do that. So for GCSEs, I was like, I'm just going to pick the things I enjoy, because if I want a job, it's probably in the things I enjoy. So PE was definitely up there for me. And then I really enjoyed the GCSE. I like did pretty well. And I was like, oh, it's a nice way to find new sports. So then I did move sixth form, and they offered C-Tech sport, which was worth 2 A-levels. And then, it was basically like a really condensed and not in-depth degree, because it was allowed to cover a lot more topics. But just obviously not to so much of an extent that degree knowledge is, where you have 3 years studying everything. But I really enjoyed that. And I was like, when they were like, oh, what do you want to do at university? I was like, oh, I did that in psychology. I was like, I want to do the sport part. That's a lot more fun. So yeah, just kind of gone with the flow, like got into Leeds. And yeah, now I'm just like vibing in studying sport. I'm very glad it's going to be over though soon. I love it, but it's just so much of a mental toll, I think, like doing a degree.
I think anybody who has been or is a student agrees with you.
Yeah.
So you're all good. You're not saying anything that's going to make people go like, how fucking dare you.
Yeah. It's so true.
The focus that you have in that is around trans inclusion in sports, you mentioned?
So that's, my dissertation is on trans University of Leeds students and their barriers and facilitators of physical activity and sport, like participation. So yeah, it's really focused about like trans students and how they participate in uni sport and even sport outside of uni, but it's kind of then to be able to get all the results and be like, here are all the barriers and things that really people are focused on. It's quite a small group, it's only 5 participants, and then kind of what their recommendations were, and then drawing from the barriers and facilitators, like what I would recommend for the university to do and like future research and stuff.
Is that something that could affect other universities as well?
Well, yeah, so because it's generalised to University of Leeds, it can very much be targeted at them and be like, this is what you need to do from the people that are here. But then that can be generalised, maybe not so specifically, but the main themes can be generalised to other like institutions. And I think other research should definitely be done on uni students, because there's only like studies in America. I don't think there's a single one focusing on the UK. If there is, I think there might have been one which is very brief. Like it was like a survey sort of thing rather than anything. But I'm not 100% sure on that one. So.
Which I guess could get us very neatly into the next point that I wanted to get into. I promise we're gonna get back to the fish and chips.
That's alright. That's alright.
I'm just like I'm savouring that.
Yeah.
First things first. Just very shortly, I'm not gonna make you like out your whole dissertation on
no,
camera
yeah.
right now. But like, so did you have like a mixed group, like across genders?
Yeah, I managed to actually get quite a good range. I had 2 non-binary people, 1 person who was genderqueer, 1 trans man, and 1 trans woman. So for having 5 people, it was definitely like the most range I probably could get, realistically. It was definitely like a word of mouth, like recruitment sort of thing. So it might only be a certain portion of the uni students. Like everyone did so much physical activity. Like it was like ridiculous minutes per week. So I think it was definitely a like select sample of a lot of people that did a lot of sport. There was only 1 person who didn't meet like the government guidelines for how much physical activity you should do in a week. Everyone else completely excelled. So
I guess as well, if one's doing anything around sports, one is probably going to attract people who are into sports.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of it. And the 1 person who didn't was a friend of a friend of a friend. So it was like they were very distant, that it kind of didn't have that bias, I think. So.
Do you think that they're... Sorry, I'm now going to get into studies, but I just... Because you're actually... really knowledgeable about this, so I'm like really interested.
Yeah.
So do you think like in future there could be another study done, not necessarily by you, free your brain, but like another study done that's like in comparison to like trans people who are really into sports and do a lot of sports and what sort of barriers they're facing, versus maybe like trans people who are not being as active as the government guidelines, what it is that is perhaps stopping them. So like one can do a future study around that. Sorry, that's less of a question and more of a like...
No, yeah, I think that would be very important. It would be so hard to recruit though, I think. That was my main issue. I went to the LGBT Society, didn't get a single person from there. I went, I put like Instagram stories up, so anyone who's following me, and I like told people to share it. And the only way I got recruitment was through talking to people and then being like, oh, I know someone that might want to do it. Or I had like 2 friends. And yeah, I think if I was more within the trans community, I think it made me really realise that I actually don't know that many trans people. And I kind of was like, oh, I'm kind of just going off of these people's friends. I'm not like getting a really wide like variety in a sense. So I think, yeah, recruitment would be the hard thing to do. Sporty people and non-sporty people, you really have to find how to target both groups, I think.
Also, mood on the recruitment part. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Especially just, especially being somebody who's not like super marketing savvy. My goodness. That was a whole thing. Shockingly, sorry, this is not a question. Shockingly, I was like, I want to put out some like actual flyers because I'm sure that there are people who are not on Instagram, and other than me, I'm sure there are people who are not on Instagram because I'm a producer now who's like doing all the Instagram stuff. But put out flyers. Somehow, that managed to get somebody from Wales into this project. So I was like, hell yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Physical flyers work.
Yeah, I was gonna put some around uni, but I just kind of ran out of time, which is the issue. So that probably could work a little bit better if you put them, maybe targeting groups that do physical activity, putting them in the physical activity spaces. That probably is a bit better.
I mean, also yours was specific to Leeds University as well, so you only have as many people, I feel, as like are at the university who can reply to it. I don't know how many people go to Leeds University, but
it's like over 30,000 or something.
Shit,
it's quite a lot.
Yeah, people.
I only know that because my town has less people in it than the Uni of Leeds has students. I think my town's like 30,000. I think the Uni of Leeds like 33 or something.
Okay. So you're actually from Leeds proper, or you're from the area?
No, I'm from Wiltshire, which is southwest, which is sort of near Bristol, closer to Bath, if you know where that is.
I gotcha. I did not. I use it as an excuse to acknowledge it. I did not grow up in England, so I just tend to be like, yep, there are places, and I know their names, and that is fine.
Southwest, like before you get to Cornwall.
Oh, cool. Slightly going back and also a bit of a side note, because you mentioned before you went to this school team, you didn't really play. You just played like with your brothers and your dad, right? Yeah,
like when I was younger.
Okay. Did you have a sense of whether there were any teams out there? I assume at the time it would have been for girls.
I think there was only a guys. I think there still is only a men's team in my like town team, but then like my primary school, there was only me and then at the time one other girl, so yeah, there was just me and one other girl, and the whole rest of the team were boys, and so I feel like that was quite intimidating. But I was only friends with boys pretty much, or like very much had a big group of friends, so that didn't bother me, but I can imagine it probably did bother a lot of other people getting into it. But yeah, I don't think there was a general like girls' town team.
So you were actually on a boys' team?
Well, it was just the school team, so I think it was just mixed. But I have a feeling like I only joined in year 6 at the same, like just after this other person did. And I have a feeling that was maybe we were only just allowed. I'm not 100% sure though.
You're a kid, so
yeah,
it's not something we necessarily think
10.
about. Yeah, no, I was just curious because I'm figuring out the like how it works in the UK with like when it's segregated or desegregated, and it's I'm interested.
Yeah.
Which is why I was like, you're on a boys team? Wow.
In primary school, everything's quite mixed, I would say. Like I went to a cricket thing where they like only invited me and one other girl as well, like, and all the rest were guys. So I think in primary school it's definitely mixed, but I think when you get to secondary school, that's when they start separating a lot more.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad that you had a nice experience on that team though.
Yeah.
It sounds like it just sounds nice. Just sounds nice. Cool. I think probably now would be a good time to segue back into my favourite part of this whole thing, which is the fish and chips team.
Yeah.
So it just lasted the one season, right?
Yeah. So, it was just the year before I moved to uni. So like 3 years ago. Wait. Oh no, because that was COVID. Oh, it must have been. Yeah, it must have been the year before. The year before, sort of like going up into the year of COVID. So 2019. Like,
really sweet.
it does, yeah. Because it. But then I feel like no. I think it was that year. I think it was 2020, but like when things got unrestricted, because I still worked during lockdown. Like, the fish and chip shop was still open, so I saw these people all the time. So then, like, when restrictions like eased, we'd then like go and play football or like go and do something, because you could only go outside in like so many groups of people. So yeah, we go and play, and then we were like, oh well, there was one person like from my work he'll take an idea and just run with it, and we were like, actually, yeah, why don't we just make a random team, just be funny. It was just to be funny, to be honest, rather than like to play. But yeah,
doing something for the bit is it's a tried and true honored ritual of humanity, something like that.
Yeah, committing to the bit was definitely a part of that. I think the kit was the funniest thing, because not everyone would have kit. They would just wear bibs or something. Like, it was that casual, and we were like, no, we're gonna make some kit. We got like a different friend to like iron on the like prints and everything.
That is amazing. I mean, it's very interesting that you did this, because actually, like, separately from this, obviously, is that there's a conversation around like, well, how does one create a grassroots team? Yeah. Because that's something that a lot of trans but also queer people generally are thinking about in terms of sports. Yeah. Like, all right, great. Well, the FA is going to be shit. Yeah. We know this. Yeah. So how do we take back the resources? And like, it seems like you guys did it for the lols. Yeah, it was very easy. It was a very low level league, but I guess that's where you'd start at grassroots. It was just a lot of like men in their like 40s, 50s, well, maybe like 30s to 50s, just kind of running about with some other men. Like, we did have someone who was a part of the next town over's team, like for their town, and he'd get like paid a little bit each time they played. But like, apart from that, none of us had really played football. We got some friends in like when some people couldn't go some weeks, so we'd get like other people in, and then we like kind of made like a core team of probably like 8-9 of us, so like we'd obviously swap in and stuff as well. But yeah, I think my friend just kind of contacted the league and was like, we want to make a team, and you just had to set it up online and like put your players in, and that's kind of what you needed, and then you just pay. I think there was like an entry fee to like submit a team, but our boss absolutely loved this idea. He's kind of old, like he's like in his 60s, but he is so down with the kids, but not in a cringe way. Like,
genuinely the loveliest person should kind of be at least a millennial. Like, like, he, like, paid the entry fee and was like, yeah, oh, I'll pay for the tops. Like, he was like, it's worth it. Like, we made an Instagram. People tried to order through the Instagram in the end. So I think it got him more business from, like, probably younger people. And, like, all of our friends ended up probably preferring that chippy to everyone else because we all made this, like, whole thing. Yeah, my boss would come and watch. We get, like, viewers. It was a men's league. And so I just kind of didn't state that I was trans. I just was like, I'm here. Because we had, at the time, only one girl working for us. She didn't want to be a part of it anyway. So it kind of never caused an issue in that sense. But yeah, she, like, come and watch. But yeah, in relation to being trans in it, like, it never became a problem. I did get booted around a bit because of being a lot smaller and a lot weaker. I, like, remember physically, like, trying to get the ball and this guy just bounced me off him. Not purposeful. He just was there. Like, he didn't even really move. He probably went like this. I was on the floor. But
yeah, I had that experience when I was a teenager, and not as trans, but just playing football in places that were mostly cis guys, because they tended to be mostly cis guys.
Yeah.
And one time, because I had a very late growth spurt, so I was very short.
Right.
One time I tried to head the ball, and the guy was trying to kick the ball, and he fully kicked me in the face.
Oh, ow.
But then after that, like, I blacked out, and I came to very quickly, and I was fine. But, like, after that, everybody on, like, because it was like a festival, something like that, and so, like, after that, every single guy who'd been playing football in any of the different little, like, mixed together teams were like, this person is amazing. I was like, yes, okay, great, thank you for like all taking me under your wing.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So yeah, I feel like there's no dishonor in being like slightly smaller.
Yeah. I also just wasn't good at football. Like, I hadn't done it in so many years at that point that, like, everyone was reteaching me things, and, like, anytime I did anything, I'd, like, kick the ball to someone, everyone would be like, yeah! They'd be like, woo! But it was also, like, I know I'm letting this team down, but no one cared. Like, it was all very much just for the fun, so I'd be like, okay, we do want to win, let's swap some people around, but I kind of just did everything apart from goalkeep. Like, I just go from... We just mix everyone everywhere, because there's only 5 aside.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you actually what your preferred position was.
I remember, like, so in year 6, I used to do goalkeeper, but, like, it was also terrifying. And then it's when you get older, people boot the ball a lot quicker, a lot scarier. So yeah, I fell out of that a lot. I was like, no, I don't want to get injured. I think I was put on the wing a lot. I just kind of went with the flow. I was like, Zach, you put me wherever you want. I don't mind. I think, but I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know, maybe I was defense quite a lot. I think I preferred defense. Like, I think I did it maybe more and I knew how to do it a little bit. Like, that's the bit I learned. And then at the end, I remember the last game I got put in striker, and I was like, why am I here? I don't know what I'm doing.
I think 5-a-side is actually in some ways, I mean, you know, not like if we're talking professional leagues with like the massive pitches, like that's obviously the most exhausting, but 5-a-side can be really, really exhausting.
Yeah, I did appreciate that it was a smaller pitch, 100%. Like, I was
going to ask you as well, like, yeah, you did that on like slightly smaller pitches, right?
Yeah, so like the main pitch was obviously like this way, and then we just like did a slither of it, like kind of, I guess, third? I think it was a third of it, yeah. So.
Well, I guess most important question, did you have fun?
Yeah. I did. I really enjoyed, especially like the Lemon Place football club vibes. I think that was probably my most enjoyed. I can't really remember the other ones that much, but I think it was a lot more about being technically good. Maybe not year 6, but when I, like, year 9, I think that was more like you've actually got to drill and like, do things. I was at the chip shop, it was like very fun just to go and kick a ball. Like, we didn't really care where we ended up. We didn't want to be last. I think we came second to last, so that was our aim.
We can get into that part of it, which is men's football. Thoughts? No. Men's football, I guess there's the like professional men's football, and then there's some of the stuff that you've been doing, and then there's also like, do you actually watch men's football, or do you watch women's football, or just none of it?
I kind of don't really watch any of it. I find watching it just to not be that interesting to me. I feel like maybe because it happens so much, and I also don't think I support a team. I only, like, my brother supports Chelsea, so throughout my life, if someone asked, I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess Chelsea, my brother supports them. But kind of where I live, like, there's no big teams, so you're not like, you just pick a random one, I feel like, or like you pick one because someone in your family likes that one. So then I've never been really like tied to the actual watching of it. I'd be more inclined to watch the women's football just because I think it would be more interesting, probably. Or like, I guess maybe like if England's on a final or semi-final, I'd probably watch that, or if it was on, like, kind of maybe have it on in the background. The only football match that I've watched fully was a YouTuber one. Like, just because I had a bit of an interest in it, so.
It's interesting that, like, the story behind it. If one has a team, one has like the story of the team, or if one's watching a YouTuber, I guess it's because you're a fan of the YouTubers.
Yeah, and like, it's interesting to see like all these random people. It's like, oh, I actually know these in a different context, whereas I guess normal footballers, I don't really care about their lives as much, and I think that might be a part of it. But then I think maybe the same in most sports. If like the Olympics was on, I'd watch the trampolining or gymnastics, but it'd be kind of more of like a flick, whereas, and I guess that just doesn't happen that often, so I'm not really like, oh, I'm gonna watch the trampolining finals. Like, it happens every 4 years with the Olympics, so I guess, yeah, whereas football's just I don't know how often, a lot, just all the time. So
we're nearing the end of the men's football season now. I say that nationally, so there's going to be the international something at some point.
Yeah.
No, it's. So do you have any sport that you actually like enjoy watching, or are you more just like, I like thinking about, like, you like doing sport, but you also like thinking about like sport science, but like like inclusion sport, like deeper questions behind the sports rather than maybe the sports themselves?
I think that's more of my interest. So like if trampolining was on, I would aim to put it on, and I did when the Olympics was on. But then I guess like social media, like I watch a lot more things of that. So bat and twirling, there is a World Championships, but there's one live stream, and it's kind of I don't know how it's going to be done. I'll probably watch a bit. I've got a lot of friends going, because it's a small sport. I know a lot of the people, and it's in the UK. It's in Liverpool this year, where Eurovision was. So I think I'd probably flick into it if I have time, maybe to see my friends. But I think that, again, is a bit different than doing it. But on social media, a lot of people post bat and twirling stuff, so I'd watch that more for the technical like side of it, like, oh, that'd be fun to try, rather than, oh, I just want to watch this, like, highlights or something. Kind of same with trampolining, is like, oh, I want to watch how you would do that, or like some cool skill that I've never seen before. So I think it's more that side rather than just like passively watching a game.
Do you own a trampoline?
No.
Oh,
no. That would be a fun investment, but onto concrete, a bit scarier.
Oh, yeah, is that?
It's all concrete out
right,
there,
okay, no.
Yeah. I also don't know if it'd fit. I guess maybe. We've got a greenhouse, which is like a weird corner bit of it, so.
If, I guess, one were to think of the kind of team that you potentially would want to be on, because you've been on, you are the rare person I've talked to who's been mostly on men's team from the sounds of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I feel like the time that I enjoyed football was that men's team, whereas like the ones at schools were just kind of like school teams. Not, I don't think I even played any matches. It was more just training.
It's just because you have to do sports in school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I guess just say that like this trans non-binary team is being set up. Say that you were interested in getting back into football. Would you want to be on a team like that, or would you prefer to just be on a men's team?
I think I'd be a lot more comfortable in a trans team. Like, I think there's just that comfortability kind of within that space. Like, you know, everyone's accepting. You know the environment's going to be uncomfortable. There's kind of no extra questions. There's no one thinking whether do you belong there, like, or even just probably being more of a grassroots sport, like more accessible. There's going to be people that are great, obviously, but I feel like where a lot of people have had barriers to the sport, it's probably a lot of people going into it more freshly, like they've done it before, but coming back to it. And I feel like that would probably be more of a comfortable environment, because that's what I feel like I am. I don't think I know how to do any of the things that like maybe even I used to do, or even then I could just about passable. So
it's in a way it's more related for you to like in terms of relative skill set, rather than like, because again you played in a men's league and there wasn't, I didn't ask you about that. Did you feel nervous about passing, or was that just like
I did. I think I felt more comfortable because everyone on my team would back me up. Like, it'd very much be a thing, but I was nervous. Obviously, that's a lot of cis guys that probably are very transphobic. Like, I feel like the type of cis guys that are in their 30s plus that go to football are going to be the ones which are maybe a bit more, like, not loving of the trans people. So I think being around trans people would be such just like, it's then not even thought about. It's not an extra thing. It's just a bit of like safety risk, I guess, as well. Like, you don't really know what could happen. You're in a physical sport. As much as it's not meant to be, it does get more physical. Even me just being bumped over, like, by accident, that easily could have been so much worse if the person didn't like me.
What do you feel about the disclosure rules?
I have to admit, I didn't know that was a thing, to be honest.
I'm glad you didn't disclose though.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. I don't think that's very safe at all. For any trans person, no matter, like, trans woman, trans man, like, you'd just be a lot more at risk, because then everyone knows, surely, and you're then just a visible target rather than like a maybe target. I feel like cis people have like a weird underlying, like, they'll somehow just know. Maybe that's just for me, but like, any cis person misgenders me all the time, and I don't think I look particularly feminine, or like, I feel like it could be like a bit suspicious, but every cis person will be immediately she, her, girl, no doubt about it. Every queer person I meet immediately goes he, him, man, and I'm like, perfect. But it's like this weird, like, if you have to disclose it, then it's like, well, they have a reason very much to be like, well, I'm not just assuming that you're a girl, I know you're trans and you're a target, because before I was just kind of pretending you weren't. I don't know if that makes much sense. I feel like I went on a bit of a roundabout way there, but
you're all good. I feel like I threw that one at you a little bit because I was suddenly thinking about it, because just because I was like, oh, you didn't disclose.
Yeah.
And you're not the only person I've talked to who hasn't disclosed, and it's been fine. You didn't get your legs and arms broken because of your fragile little body or something like that. That didn't happen. So
no,
like,
not at all. I at worst got pushed over, which also happened to other people. It just happened. There was a very like tall, pretty like hefty man, and I just kind of bounced off of him, and I fell on my butt. Like, I don't think anything else happened. Someone else got in a fight because he like, one guy shoved him, and then he was like, what are you doing? And then that guy tried to fight him. I think that's more risk. I'm not going to go and do that. I'm okay. I don't want to fight. Like...
I'm surprised that more cis women aren't up in arms about the language being really misogynistic, because it's all framed in like, oh, we're protecting these poor fragile women who the minute they were to, I don't know, touch a ball with their dainty feet would break their toes or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, I would be really pissed off if I were being framed in that way. What do you think actually, like, speaking of like a trans and non-binary team, what do you think that it is that trans and non-binary people can bring to a space that makes that space better? It's a very vague one. You can answer it in whichever way you want.
So I think definitely like kind of a sense of community. It's definitely an easy way to meet other trans people, like kind of within the team. I think that definitely brings a lot, like, yeah, just a lot of socializing, social aspect, really making friends. I think that's very important, and that having that space, because other people manage to do that in physical activity spaces. That's kind of a thing that can't, or is definitely a disadvantage, especially like from my hearing that people struggle to make friends in team sports especially. And I think I feel the same. Like, I very much stick to individual sports. I don't know whether that's kind of as a result of being trans or just things I enjoy, but I do normally stick to individual sports. So being in a team, you manage to get a lot more people and like more involved, kind of that group chemistry, I think. Whereas in an individual sport, you train together, but not really working together. I think that's kind of that difference. Kind of bringing it outside of the team, like maybe to like a wider context. I think it just kind of gets a bit of visibility that trans people can play sports. And a lot of people, I think there's two different opinions. A lot of trans people would feel a lot more comfortable in being in a trans team or even a queer team. And then a lot of cis people are like, oh, they should just go in their own category. So I think that's a bit hard, like, but I think showing that being in a trans team voluntarily does have a lot of positivity. I joined the Gymnastics Society. I only went a few times, but I'd never done it before, but I'd always really wanted to as a kid, but we couldn't get the timings right. Like, I couldn't go when there was a space or something. And so I went and I was like, oh my God, this is so fun. Like, all these little things that I'm kind of good because I do trampolining. Like, I have a bit of the knowledge behind it. I also coach trampolining. So I've kind of got a bit of the technique, but like just trying to do a somersault on the floor. I was like, oh my God, this is so fun. Like, I'm doing this for my own enjoyment. I'm not doing it because I'm being forced in that space. And I guess that's the same with like football and being like, oh, I can join a trans team if there's that available, and people are putting those teams out now. I think there's only going to be more around the country as well. I think that's a really good positive of like there being a team. It's like, oh, actually we can do that, because I kind of hadn't even thought that was a possibility until I saw Truck, and then I was like, oh, that's cool. And then Maddie was like, oh, there's this team, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I kind of would be down to join that. I hadn't considered joining football or doing anything football related at uni. I was like, oh, that's something I did in the past, it's over. But I'm like considering it now. I don't think I would even want to outside. And so for a bit of fun and doing it just for doing it for just doing it for a bit of fun and going to kick about a ball, which I would have never have done at uni, like without there being a trans team and that comfortability around it.
Let's keep in the microcosm of football, but with the knowledge of sports in the back of his head. Like, we've talked a little bit about like why it is that it's very cool that this kind of a team can exist today, and a little bit about the like willingly going into a team and being like, I want to be in this space because it's a safe space for me, versus other people trying to like segregate spaces. In like, let's say 50 years, let's assume that everything just goes so well and only gets better and super accepting, and everybody's just really chill with trans people, and they're looking back 50 years and going, what the fuck was up with those guys?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Hopefully. What do you think that like an ideal team setup might be, just in terms of availabilities? Like, would you think it would be sort of mixed leagues, or would it be sort of there's women's league and there's a men's league but they're trans inclusive, or would it be that there are like lots of different leagues dependent on like for example there's obviously a disability league right now and things like that, like just throwing it out there.
I'm not 100% sure. It's kind of hard to see where 50 years would take you in a sense. It'd obviously be great if there was just completely mixed teams, or it evens out like on ability level, or I don't know, some sort of characteristic rather than just gender. But yeah, I don't know what the best idea would be for that. Like, once you start thinking about one thing, you're like, oh, but what about this other characteristic that would make it like unfair or something? But I definitely don't think it's unfair to include trans people in sport. Yeah.
That's cool. I promise as well, I'm not like put you under the gun to solve all of the problems.
No, that's right. Yeah. It's kind of me working out my own thought process, I think.
Yeah, it's a very big question. It's a bit repetitive of what you might have said before, but I think it's worth asking anyway. What do you think is important about trans people being able to access sport?
Well, I think everyone is entitled to do physical activity and play sport. I think that there just shouldn't be... Well, everyone's going to have different barriers to different sports and doing it, which could just be time and how much time you have in a day. But there shouldn't be an inherent barrier of just trans people in general having significant like issues at accessing sport. I think that there's so many like mental health and physical health benefits. Like, that's kind of my whole degree, is like physical benefits of doing sport, like cardiovascular, respiratory. Like, if you meet the recommended guidelines, like, you have such a better like quality of life. Like, there's so many aspects of like what physical activity in sport does. So just having barriers to that, they should try and be minimized as much as possible, so everyone can access these benefits, because that's the inherent reason for physical activity. That's why we do it, because it makes us healthier. Yes, there's benefits of competition and socializing. Well, socializing I think plays a part of like mental health benefits, but like learning tactics and things, that's kind of additional on top, and that competition is kind of an extra. If you win, it's like, yeah, I get a trophy, but I've also just helped my heart live another few years. Perfect. So I think, yeah, that definitely, I think, is one of the reasons why everyone needs access to sport, no matter who you are. But like trans people, there's, I think, a very big part of like maybe loneliness and feeling maybe a bit like excluded from a lot of spaces, especially within sport. I've read some studies on that. It's a really high number of people that stop sport completely when they transition. And then again, like a lot of people don't feel comfortable in gyms and other like leisure spaces and stuff. So Mermaids also came out with a short report. Their actual like study hasn't come out. Makes it very hard to reference. But they've brought like a short report out, and it's got it's targeting 11 to 16 year olds, which is like something no one's covered at all. It was a lot of like qualitative data rather than like how much you do, but it did like go over like what sports people do, like and just different things. It was really interesting. I'd recommend giving that a read just for interest. It's also in a little flip book, which made it a lot easier to read. I was like, oh, I love my dis research when it's like this. Why can't all the studies blur? But yeah, so there's a lot. Sport England did have like you can make like a inquiry of like what you want to compare things of. So there's like, it's kind of hard to explain. You like go through and select like what categories you want to see compared and like their physical activity levels. So I've done like the whole population, student population, and then they didn't have trans as an option, but they did have gender described in another way. So it's a minimal amount, but it's like not on any of their reports. The only way you can find this information is if you make the query yourself. So it's the only data I've had to go off of within the UK. And only so because of COVID, I went for like 2018 to 2019, and only 46% of gender in another way met the physical activity levels of 150 minutes per week of moderate exercise, which is significantly low. Like the whole population was 63% and student population was 76%. So yeah, it's very, very low compared to those. But like from what you said, I'm sure it's lower, to be honest, because that's only gender in another way if they want to disclose it as well. So, and I don't think they're going to be targeting a lot of trans people as well. Like I think it's just going to be a few people. You can't see how many people that is made up of. It's only 1%. So yeah, it's hard to know how accurate that is, but
that's also a separate thing, which I'm so sure that you had to come up against several times during your study, is that there's a curious disinterest outside of specific trans organizations and trans people. There's a disinterest in actually doing the research, in finding out like what trans people need. All of the like data that say some organization like the FA or the rugby people, whatever, are going off of, they're not going off of any data that actually includes trans people as people. Like, they're always considered like an outside problem that needs to be dealt with for some other population group. And it's like, but actually you're not doing any research for trans people.
There's not much research into like specific things at all. There's a lot of overviews, or qualitative data, which is good for in-depth, but I think for something like the FA, then they're going to want quantitative data. They're going to want numbers where they can be like, well, this is compared to this, or like have a control group and then, or like a cis group and a trans group sort of thing. And I think that's kind of where the problem lies a little bit. And as we've been reading studies, all the authors are all the same, just in different orders, basically. Like, I've got a lot of references, but then kind of being very specific, like so many studies, it's like the same 3 people even, but just like, oh, I'll take it this term being the lead, like, one. Because I'll read them and I'm like writing the references down and I'm like, oh my god, like, these are just the same people over and over again. Like, or like you read one, you're like, well, I don't know if you have much knowledge about this topic. Like, I'll be reading it, I'm like, it's like you've done a study, but like it feels a bit off. Like, I've read it, but I'm not going to use it, sort of thing. Like,
it's very interesting around like somebody will do a study on something, then you'll go into the like actual data points that they're like writing this text off of, and you'll be like, oh, you've spoken to 3 trans people and 100 cis people, and the 100 cis people said.
It's like, well, maybe you can trust the 100 cis people because there's 100. 3 trans people is so low. I've noticed. That's what a lot of it is.
Yeah. Do you have an anecdote or just like a story related to having played football, maybe with your fish and chips? team. I know if I should. I feel like it's like fish and chips team said with the utmost respect because I am so enamored with it.
Oh, absolutely! It's such a fun fact.
Yeah. Like an anecdote or something that happened while you were playing or practicing or what have you that you thought was really like at the time you thought was really fun, or you learned something from it, or it just stuck with you.
I'm trying to think of anything like specific. I think, being a part of like the fish and chip shop team, like kind of just overall, but I feel like where we train, we just pick a random field or like next to a park where it has like a really bad goalpost, but it was especially in that moment like after lockdown where you'd miss kind of all that physical activity. I think just being among kind of like a kind of mismatched group of people, like you'd look at us and you'd be like, why are these guys friends? But we all had this like work in common, and so then being able to just go and play football from that, I think that was just like a very nice time after being locked down, kind of a scary like external environment. I think just going kicking a ball about, like having a laugh, grabbing some ice creams or something from a shop. I think it just was a very nice relieving thing. Kind of more like a general overview. I can't think of anything too specific, but
no, it sounds kind of. You'd want to make like a little short film about it. It's so delightful. I can't overstate. I mean, you probably already know because you were a part of it.
Yeah.
It's
a great fun fact to tell people.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, my fish and chip shop, we made a football team, and everyone was like, what? Like someone's name on the back of their shirt was Nuggets. Like someone was Fish Cake. Like, I was Alpha Male, but someone was Richard Branson. Just like random things, like.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Lemon Place
FC.
Yeah.
There we go. Lemon Place FC. That was where you used to live in.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
Back home before university.
Cool. I just wanted to clarify because I was like, this sounds like a small town team, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Around here.
Definitely a small town team. Yeah.
Cool. As somebody who's done a bit of research yourself, and you've done it as a single person, so without a whole bunch of backers and funders behind you, what is it that you wish that was actually being asked in research in terms of trans inclusion in sports? This is also very broad. You can answer and you can have like a top 3 or something if you want, but like whatever you want. Yeah,
I think there's so much because not much research has been done. Just more research in a lot more places, I think. But then nothing has really used any of the research and made recommendations. It kind of feels like the research that's being done is not a bit of a waste, but like kind of between that, it's not being very useful. No one's really taking it and actually making kind of, because a lot of what I'm looking at is grassroots. No one's really taking the policies and applying it. There's not many places where it's been done. A lot of it seems to be actually going backwards, even though a lot of the research is just really contradicting that. Might be because a lot of people just don't really care about trans people participating. They don't have to think about them. They don't have to do anything about them. But I think a lot of making inclusive practices, inclusive policies, the only ones I found have been gendered intelligence, and sort of mermaids, like within it being like, here are some brief recommendations. But there's no easy like national governing body like being like, this is what you should do as a grassroots club, inclusive practices. I'm sure there probably is a few out there, but it's very minimal. And I think really research, really hammering down and being like, this is the recommendations, this is what you need to do.
I mean, because like the irony of visibility is, of course, that before one is visible, one can sort of, in small ways, slip through the cracks. So, like, for example, what I was saying about disclosing.
Yeah.
Like, before any of these bodies were even really considering trans men as a concept, they didn't have any of those rules.
Yeah.
So any trans man who already did pass was just, I mean, which isn't perfect either.
No, yeah.
There's obviously a bunch of people who don't pass, but like there's an irony that like a lot of what they deem as a problem now has already existed for however long.
Yeah.
And they're only calling it a problem now because now they see it, which is obviously has hit trans women a lot harder.
Yeah.
We are basically at the end, but just before the end, is there anything that anything that you really wish that we'd been able to get into, that you were like, I didn't get to talk about this thing because it didn't really come up naturally or whatever, or like a finishing thought that you have?
Kind of just the gender structure of sport is a very big barrier, because that includes just like facilities, just not even having gender neutral options, which a lot of trans people are a lot more inclined to use. I'd much rather use a gender neutral changing room than the men's, and toilets and everything like that. So I think that's quite important to have in those spaces. I think football, you can just meet at a park and already be changed and things. So, but I guess that if you're making a club and you have a base, it really needs to think about trans people in the construction of that, and not just being an afterthought. I think making trans people just a first thought, or even near the beginning, would be a really good like thing to have happened. But yeah, I think that's kind of everything.
I mean, yeah, proactive.
That's a good word. That was it. Proactive. Yeah.
No, I totally got what you meant as well.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I really like the idea of first thought. By the way, I think that's quite a lovely way of framing it.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be a first thought. It would be nice that people were proactive about considering that this is the reality that is already there, and not to act so shocked every single time.